single warning, two unlikely allies, and a race against time across the Texas plains. What they discover on that ride will change everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The scorching Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the parched landscape of Comanche territory in the summer of 1875. Tall Buffalo, a proud Comanche warrior of 25 summers, rode his painted Mustang across the rolling plains, his dark eyes scanning the horizon with the vigilance that had kept him alive through years of conflict with white settlers. The peace treaties meant little to many of his people, who had watched their hunting grounds shrink and their way of life threatened. His leather-bound braid swung against his back as he guided his horse toward a small creek, one of the few that hadn't dried up in the relentless heat. The settlement of New Hope lay less than a day's ride away, a place he generally avoided, filled with wary settlers who viewed any Comanche with suspicion and fear. Tall Buffalo dismounted, allowing his horse to drink while he refilled his water pouch. The quiet was suddenly broken by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. His hand instinctively moved to the knife at his waist as he turned to face the potential threat. A young woman reined her horse to a stop several yards away. She was clearly white, with golden hair falling in a single braid down her back. She wore a simple dress dusty from travel, and her face showed determination rather than the fear he was accustomed to seeing. "Are you of the Comanche?" she asked, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. Tall Buffalo regarded her with suspicion. "I am Numunu," he replied, using his people's name for themselves. "Why does a white girl ride alone in dangerous lands?" She slid down from her horse, keeping her distance but standing her ground. "My name is Sarah Thompson. I've come from New Hope. You need to come with me." The absurdity of her demand made him laugh, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "Why would I follow a white girl anywhere?" he asked, crossing his arms across his chest. "Because your people are in danger," she replied simply, "and I think you're the only one who can help them." His laughter died. "What do you know of my people?" Sarah took a cautious step forward. "The U.S. Army is planning to raid your village tomorrow at dawn. Captain Morris believes your band has been stealing cattle. He means to make an example of your people." "How would you know this?" Tall Buffalo's voice was cold with suspicion. "My father is the doctor in New Hope. The soldiers came to his clinic. I overheard them talking." Her blue eyes met his directly. "I know what happened at Sand Creek and at the Washita River. I couldn't stay silent." Tall Buffalo studied her face, looking for signs of deception. "Why would you risk yourself for Comanche?" "Because it's wrong," she said simply. "And because I know your chief, White Eagle, has been keeping peace. These accusations are false." His eyes narrowed. "How do you know White Eagle?" "He brought his son to my father when the boy was sick with fever last winter. My father treated him. Your chief has honored the peace." Tall Buffalo remembered this. The chief's youngest son had indeed fallen ill, and against all tradition, White Eagle had sought help from the white medicine man when their own healers could not break the fever. "If you're lying," he began. "I'm not," she interrupted. "But we're wasting time. Your village is half a day's ride from here. The soldiers will move at first light." He weighed his options quickly. If she spoke truth, his people, including his mother and sisters, were in grave danger. If it was a trap, he was but one warrior, and his life would be a small price to pay for the safety of his band. "I will go," he decided. "But you will ride with me." "I expected nothing less," Sarah replied, gathering her horse's reins. "I know a route that avoids the army patrols." As they mounted their horses, Tall Buffalo cast a sidelong glance at this strange white woman, who risked herself for Comanche lives. "Why would the daughter of a white healer care what happens to my people?" Sarah's expression hardened. "My mother was Cheyenne. I was too young to save her people when the soldiers came. I will not stand by again." Understanding dawned in Tall Buffalo's eyes. This was no simple country girl, but a woman with feet in two worlds. Like many of the mixed-blood children who lived in the shadows of both societies, belonging fully to neither. They rode hard through the afternoon, the landscape changing from open plains to rocky outcroppings that provided some shelter from both the sun and potential watching eyes. Sarah proved to be a skilled rider, keeping pace without complaint, despite the grueling conditions. The soldiers have a new commander, she explained as they paused briefly to rest the horses. Captain Morris wants to make a name for himself. He doesn't care about the peace treaties. Many white chiefs speak of peace with forked tongues, Tall Buffalo replied bitterly. They make marks on paper, then send soldiers to kill us anyway. Not all whites want war, Sarah countered. My father has treated your people whenever they've come to him. There are others in New Hope who trade fairly. A few good hearts do not stop the tide that washes away our hunting grounds, he said, scanning the horizon. But I will remember that Sarah Thompson's heart is good. As the sun began to sink toward the western hills, Tall Buffalo felt the first stirrings of genuine worry. They were still several hours from the village. Even riding through the night, they would barely arrive before dawn. We must ride faster, he said grimly, swinging back onto his Mustang. Sarah nodded. Determination etched on her face as she mounted her own horse. Then we ride as if the wind itself chases us. And ride they did, through the gathering darkness, their shared purpose creating an unlikely alliance between the Comanche warrior and the country girl with Cheyenne blood, each carrying the weight of their people's painful history, yet pushing forward toward an uncertain dawn. The night enveloped them like a dark blanket, stars emerging overhead as Tall Buffalo and Sarah pushed their horses to the limits of endurance. The moon cast long shadows across the landscape, transforming familiar terrain into a ghostly world of silver and black. Neither spoke much, conserving energy for the urgent journey ahead. Your horse needs rest, Tall Buffalo finally said, noticing how Sarah's mount had begun to labor beneath her. We stopped briefly. They dismounted near a small stand of cottonwoods, the trees offering some protection from watching eyes. Tall Buffalo moved with the practiced silence of a warrior, his senses alert to any sign of danger as he helped Sarah lead the horses to water. How did you come to live among the whites? He asked quietly, curious about this woman who bridged two worlds. Sarah stroked her horse's neck as the animal drank. My father met my mother when he was a young army doctor. He left the military because he couldn't bear what they were doing to her people. They fell in love, married in secret. Her voice grew softer. After the massacre at Sand Creek, he took us east, away from the fighting. When things calmed, we returned, but as settlers, not soldiers. And your mother? She died of smallpox 5 winters ago. Sarah's face tightened with old grief. Many in New Hope blamed her sickness on being Indian, said it was God's judgment. My father nearly left again, but he stayed to help both settlers and natives who needed healing. Tall Buffalo nodded slowly, understanding the complexity of her position. You walk a difficult path between two worlds. As do you, she observed. You speak the white man's tongue well. A shadow crossed his face. I was taken to a mission school as a boy. They tried to beat the Comanche out of me. His hand unconsciously touched a scar at his temple. I ran away after 2 winters and found my way back to my people. Yet you learned their language. To know your enemy's words is to have power, he replied. The missionaries taught me that much, though not as they intended. They fell silent, each contemplating the strange circumstances that had brought them together. After allowing the horses a short rest, they mounted again and continued their desperate race against dawn. As they rode, Tall Buffalo's thoughts turned to his village. White Eagle was a wise chief who had chosen the path of peace when many younger warriors had argued for continued resistance. The band had settled in this territory, learning to farm while still maintaining as many of their traditions as possible. It was a precarious existence, but they had survived. Tell me more about these cattle thefts, he said suddenly. Sarah guided her horse closer so they could speak without raising their voices. 3 ranches have lost cattle in the past month. Tracks led toward Comanche territory, but that proves nothing. Captain Morris was looking for an excuse. Our hunters have not taken white men's cattle, Tall Buffalo stated firmly. White Eagle forbade it. We have our own small herd now, and the buffalo we can still find. I believe you, Sarah said, but there are some in New Hope who would blame Indians for anything that goes wrong. And Captain Morris, she hesitated. My father says he was at the Washita River massacre with Custer. Tall Buffalo's expression hardened at the mention of that bloody attack on a peaceful village. Then, he has already tasted the blood of innocent people and found it to his liking. That's why we must reach your people first, Sarah urged. rode on through the night, the landscape gradually becoming more familiar to Tall Buffalo. They were nearing Comanche territory, and he felt both relief and mounting anxiety. Would they arrive in time? As they crested a ridge, Tall Buffalo suddenly raised his hand, signaling Sarah to stop. He dismounted quickly, dropping to the ground and pressing his ear to the earth. "What is it?" Sarah whispered, joining him. "Hoofbeats," he replied grimly. "Many horses, moving fast." Sarah's face paled in the moonlight. "The soldiers? Already?" "No." Tall Buffalo shook his head. "Coming from the wrong direction, and they do not ride in formation." He listened again, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "These are not soldiers, and they are heading toward New Hope." "Raiders?" Sarah's voice caught. "But who?" Tall Buffalo stood, his face grim. "There are Comancheros who work with renegades from many tribes, Kiowa, Apache, even some of my own people who refuse the reservations. They raid across the territories." "You think they're responsible for the cattle thefts?" Sarah realized. "It would explain the tracks leading toward our lands," he agreed. "They let the blame fall on peaceful bands while they profit." Sarah's eyes widened with sudden fear. "New Hope is nearly undefended with the soldiers preparing to attack your village." The implications hung in the air between them. Tall Buffalo faced an impossible choice: continue to warn his people, or turn aside to help the settlement that had harbored this woman and her father, perhaps the only whites who had shown true kindness to his band. "My father is there," Sarah said quietly, not pleading but stating a simple truth. Tall Buffalo closed his eyes briefly, the weight of decision heavy upon him. When he opened them, his resolve was clear. "We divide our path. I will send you toward your village with warning while I continue to my people." "No," Sarah shook her head firmly. "The raiders are between us and New Hope. I wouldn't make it alone. And your people need warning more urgently. The attack comes at dawn." "Then what do you suggest?" he asked, frustration edging his voice. "We continue to your village together," she said. "We warn your people, and then perhaps some of your warriors can ride with us to New Hope. We save both." Tall Buffalo considered her words. It was a desperate plan, requiring his people to help protect the very settlement whose soldiers planned to attack them. Yet the alternative was to abandon either his own people or this woman who had risked everything to warn them. "White Eagle is a wise chief," he said finally. "He will see that helping New Hope proves we are not the raiders. It may prevent future attacks." Relief flooded Sarah's face. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet," he cautioned. "We must still reach my village before dawn, and then convince my people to help those who have often been their enemies." They mounted again, pushing their tired horses to greater speed. The eastern sky remained dark, but Tall Buffalo knew the night was waning. Time was their most dangerous enemy now. As they rode, a new understanding grew between them. Two people from different worlds, united by a common desire to prevent bloodshed on both sides. Whether their desperate plan would succeed remained to be seen, but in this moment, riding side by side through the darkness, they had found an unlikely alliance that transcended the conflicts of their peoples. "There," Tall Buffalo finally said, pointing to a distant rise where the land dipped into a sheltered valley. "My village lies just beyond. We may yet arrive in time." The first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the eastern sky as Tall Buffalo and Sarah crested the final ridge overlooking the Comanche encampment. Below them, nestled in the protective embrace of the valley, teepees stood in a semicircle around a central gathering place. A small herd of horses grazed nearby, with a few warriors already awake and tending to early morning duties. "We made it," Sarah breathed, relief evident in her voice. "Just barely," Tall Buffalo replied, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of approaching soldiers. "Come, we must speak with White Eagle immediately." They urged their exhausted horses down the slope, approaching the village at a canter. Their arrival caused immediate commotion. Women paused in their morning work, children pointed and called out, and several warriors moved swiftly to intercept them, hands on weapons. "Tall Buffalo returns with a white woman," someone shouted in Comanche. White Eagle emerged from his teepee, his aging but still powerful frame draped in a blanket against the morning chill. Despite his 60 winters, the chief stood tall, his face deeply lined, but his eyes sharp and alert. "What is this, Tall Buffalo?" he demanded as they dismounted. "Why do you bring a white woman to our camp?" Tall Buffalo stepped forward, raising his hand in respect before speaking urgently in Comanche. "Great Chief, this woman rode alone to find me with warning. Soldiers from New Hope plan to attack our village at dawn, blaming us for cattle raids we did not commit." Murmurs spread through the gathering crowd. White Eagle's expression remained impassive, though his eyes narrowed slightly as he shifted his gaze to Sarah. "You speak our tongue?" he asked her in English. "No, Chief White Eagle," she replied respectfully, "but I remember you. I am Sarah Thompson, daughter of Dr. Say Thompson, who treated your son last winter." Recognition flickered in the old chief's eyes. The healer's daughter with Cheyenne eyes. "Why would you betray your own kind to warn us?" "I betray no one by preventing an unjust attack," Sarah answered steadily. "My father taught me that all lives hold equal value. The soldiers blame you for crimes you didn't commit." White Eagle studied her for a long moment before turning back to Tall Buffalo. "You believe her?" "I do," Tall Buffalo replied without hesitation. "And there is more. On our journey, we discovered riders heading toward New Hope, Comancheros and renegades. With the soldiers planning to attack us, the settlement will be defenseless." This news sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the assembled people. White Eagle raised his hand for silence. "So the real thieves move against the white settlement while their soldiers come for us," he mused, his weathered face grave. "What would you have us do, Tall Buffalo?" "Prepare our people to move to the hidden canyon," Tall Buffalo suggested. "The women, children, and elders will be safe there. Then I propose we send warriors, not to fight the soldiers, but to help defend New Hope against the raiders." Outraged protests erupted from several of the younger warriors. "Help the whites who come to kill us?" Black Knife, a fierce young warrior, spat on the ground. "Let the raiders have them." "Silence!" White Eagle commanded, his authority unquestioned despite the controversial nature of the proposal. He turned to Sarah. "You would have us save those who wish us harm?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "If you defend New Hope from these raiders, no one can deny your innocence. The soldiers will have to recognize their mistake. There could be peace instead of bloodshed." White Eagle was silent for a long moment, weighing her words. "And if we refuse? If we simply flee to safety? Then both our peoples suffer," she replied honestly. "My father and many innocents in New Hope may die, and your band will forever be blamed for crimes you didn't commit. The army will hunt you relentlessly." The chief nodded slowly, then turned to address his people in Comanche. Tall Buffalo translated quietly for Sarah. "White Eagle says this is not a simple choice. The white soldiers have broken many promises, killed many of our people. But he also says that continuing the cycle of vengeance has cost us dearly. Perhaps this is an opportunity the Great Spirit has placed before us." After a passionate debate among the tribal council, White Eagle raised his hand for silence once more. His decision was made. "We will do as Tall Buffalo suggests," he announced. "The women, children, and elders will go to the hidden canyon with half our warriors for protection. Tall Buffalo will lead our best fighters to help defend New Hope. Perhaps the White Eyes will finally see that not all Comanche are raiders, just as we now see that not all whites wish us harm." He nodded toward Sarah with something approaching respect. "Thank you," Sarah said simply. "Do not thank me yet," White Eagle replied, unconsciously echoing Tall Buffalo's earlier words. The path ahead remains dangerous. The village erupted into activity as people gathered essentials for the evacuation. Horses were brought in from pasture, children were gathered, and warriors prepared their weapons. The efficiency of their response spoke to a people who had long lived with the threat of sudden displacement. "We have little time," Tall Buffalo told Sarah as they helped an elderly woman secure her belongings. "The soldiers could arrive any moment, and the raiders are already on their way to New Hope." "How many warriors will ride with us?" she asked. 15 of our best," he replied. "Not many against Comancheros, but perhaps enough to make a difference." An hour later, as the eastern sky blushed pink with approaching sunrise, 2 groups departed the village in opposite directions. The larger group, women, children, elders, and their protectors, headed west toward the hidden canyon that had sheltered the band during previous conflicts. The smaller group, Tall Buffalo, Sarah, and 15 determined warriors, rode east toward New Hope. As they rode, Tall Buffalo found himself watching Sarah with growing admiration. She had not complained once despite the exhaustion that clearly pulled at her. Her concern for both her people and his spoke of a spirit that transcended the boundaries that divided their worlds. "Your father must be a remarkable man," he commented as they rode side by side. Sarah's face softened. "He is. He taught me to see people as individuals, not as tribes or races. He will understand what we're trying to do. And the others in your settlement?" Her expression grew more guarded. "Some will, others," she sighed. "Fear and hatred run deep, but if we can stop these raiders, perhaps they'll begin to see differently." Tall Buffalo nodded, understanding the complexity of what lay ahead. They were attempting something unprecedented. Comanche warriors riding to protect a white settlement while their own families fled from white soldiers. The irony was not lost on him. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "I am glad our paths crossed, Sarah Thompson." She turned to him, surprise evident in her expression before it softened into a smile. "As am I, Tall Buffalo." They crested a rise, and in the distance the small collection of buildings that formed New Hope came into view. Even from this distance, they could see movement. Riders approaching from the north, still some ways off but closing fast. "The raiders," Sarah breathed. "And no sign of the soldiers," Tall Buffalo observed grimly. "They are likely still preparing to attack our empty village." He turned to his warriors, speaking rapidly in Comanche, laying out their plan. They would not ride directly into town, which would likely cause panic. Instead, Sarah would go ahead to warn her people while the Comanche warriors positioned themselves to intercept the raiders. "Be swift," he told Sarah, as she prepared to ride ahead. "Tell your people we come as allies, not enemies." She nodded, her face resolute despite the fear evident in her eyes. "Be careful, Tall Buffalo. My father's clinic is the white building with the red cross. Come there when this is over." With that, she dug her heels into her horse's sides and galloped toward New Hope, carrying a message of unlikely alliance that might just save both their peoples, if she could make them believe. Sarah thundered into New Hope, her horse's hooves kicking up dust along the main street. Early morning had brought a few townsfolk out to begin their day's work, and they stopped to stare at the doctor's daughter, disheveled and clearly in distress. "Raiders coming!" she shouted, pulling her exhausted horse to a stop near the general store where several men had gathered. "Comancheros from the north! They'll be here within the hour." Sheriff Williams emerged from his office, buckling his gun belt. "Sarah, what in tarnation are you talking about? And where have you been? Your father's been worried sick." "There's no time," she insisted, sliding from her horse. "The cattle thieves weren't Comanche. They were Comancheros. They're heading this way with a large raiding party." The men exchanged skeptical glances. Tom Miller, the blacksmith, spat tobacco juice into the dust. "And how would you know that, girl?" "Because I saw them," she replied firmly. "And because I found help." "Help?" Sheriff Williams frowned. "What help?" "Captain Morris took most of his men to deal with those Comanche." "That's just it," Sarah interrupted. "The Comanche are innocent, and they're coming to help us defend New Hope." A stunned silence fell over the gathering crowd, broken by a burst of incredulous laughter from several men. "Comanche? Helping us?" Miller scoffed. "Girl, have you lost your mind?" "Sarah!" Dr. Thompson pushed through the crowd, his normally kind face lined with worry and exhaustion. He grasped his daughter's shoulders. "Where have you been?" "I've been searching all night." "Father, listen to me," she pleaded. "I rode to warn the Comanche about Captain Morris's attack. They're innocent of the cattle raids, and now their warriors are coming to help us against the real raiders." Dr. Thompson's eyes widened in understanding. "You went to their village? Alone?" "I had to," she said. "And now we have to prepare. The raiders will be here soon, and we need every gun." The skepticism on the faces around her was palpable, but her father straightened, turning to address the crowd. "My daughter has never lied," he said firmly. "If she says raiders are coming, then I believe her. And if Comanche warriors are offering help, we'd be fools to refuse." Sheriff Williams rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Doc, no disrespect, but these are Comanche we're talking about. The same Indians that Captain Morris went to teach a lesson." "A lesson they don't deserve," Sarah insisted. "Sheriff, I've seen the raiders with my own eyes. There must be 20 or more. How many men can you muster right now with the soldiers gone? The sheriff glanced around, mentally counting. Maybe 10 who can shoot straight. Then we need the Comanche, Dr. Thompson concluded. Simple as that. A tense silence fell over the crowd. Then, from the edge of town, a sentry's voice called out, "Riders coming from the east!" All heads turned. In the distance, a line of mounted warriors appeared on the ridge, their silhouettes distinctive against the morning sky. At their head rode Tall Buffalo, his feathered lance held high as a standard. "They're here," Sarah breathed, relief evident in her voice. "And so are the raiders," came another shout, this time from the north side of town. "Lots of 'em." Sheriff Williams made his decision quickly. "Miller, Jenkins, get every man with a gun to the north side. Doc, get the women and children into the church basement." He turned to Sarah. "You really think these Comanche are here to help?" "I stake my life on it," she replied without hesitation. The sheriff nodded grimly. "Then go meet them. Tell them we accept their help." Sarah raced toward the eastern edge of town as the citizens of New Hope mobilized for defense. Women hurried children toward the stone church. Men grabbed rifles and ammunition, and barriers were hastily constructed from wagons and barrels. Tall Buffalo reined his horse to a stop as Sarah approached, the warriors behind him watching warily for any sign of treachery. "The raiders approach from the north," she reported breathlessly. "Sheriff Williams accepts your help and is positioning men there." Tall Buffalo nodded, turning to issue commands in Comanche. The warriors immediately split into two groups, one heading directly north to confront the raiders head-on, the other circling to approach from the flank. "Your people are ready to fight alongside us?" he asked, as they rode together toward the town. "Not all believe yet," she admitted, "but they will when they see you fight to protect them." They reached the north side of town, just as the raiders came into view. A motley group of Comancheros, renegade Indians from various tribes, and border outlaws, all armed and riding hard toward the settlement. Gunfire erupted as New Hope's defenders opened fire from behind their makeshift barricades. The raiders, expecting an easy target with the soldiers away, were surprised by the resistance. Their surprise turned to shock when Tall Buffalo's warriors charged their flank with war cries that sent chills down the spines of everyone who heard them. What followed was a chaotic battle that raged at the edges of New Hope. The Comanche warriors, though outnumbered, fought with precision and coordination that the raiders lacked. Tall Buffalo himself was everywhere, his lance claiming 2 raiders before he was forced to resort to his rifle. Sarah helped her father tend to the wounded, shuttling between the church basement and the battle lines. She glimpsed Tall Buffalo several times, directing his warriors, helping a wounded townsman to safety, fighting with the skill of a man born to battle. The tide turned when Sheriff Williams led a desperate charge that broke the raiders' line, forcing them to retreat. The Comanche warriors pursued, ensuring the threat would not regroup and return. As the gunfire faded, an uneasy silence fell over New Hope. Townspeople emerged cautiously from their shelters to find Comanche warriors dismounting in their streets, not as conquerors, but as allies who had shed blood in their defense. In front of the doctor's clinic, Tall Buffalo dismounted wearily, blood seeping from a graze along his arm. He found Sarah tending to a wounded townsman on the porch. "Your people fought well," he said simply. She looked up, relief flooding her face at the sight of him. "As did yours. Come inside. Let me tend to that arm." As she bandaged his wound, Dr. Thompson entered with news. "A rider just came from the east. Captain Morris and his men are returning." Tall Buffalo tensed. "My people?" "Safe," the doctor assured him. "The soldiers found an empty village and were returning when they heard the gunfire. They should be here within the hour." "Then I should take my warriors and go," Tall Buffalo said, rising. "Many of your people will not understand what happened here today." "No," Sarah said firmly, placing a hand on his arm. "You're not leaving. Not like this. What happened here today changes everything." Dr. Thompson nodded in agreement. "My daughter is right. Your people saved this town. Captain Morris needs to understand that." When Captain Morris rode into New Hope an hour later, he was met with an unprecedented sight. Comanche warriors standing alongside townspeople, helping to rebuild damaged structures and tend to the wounded. At the center of the town square stood Sheriff Williams, Dr. Thompson, Sarah, and Tall Buffalo, representatives of 2 worlds finding common ground. "What is the meaning of this?" the captain demanded, his hand moving toward his sidearm. Sheriff Williams stepped forward. These Comanches saved our town today, Captain. They fought alongside us against the real cattle thieves, Comancheros and renegades who've been operating in the territory. That's absurd, Morris scoffed. These savages were innocent, Dr. Thompson interrupted firmly. We have prisoners who've confessed. The Comancheros deliberately left tracks leading toward Comanche territory. Captain Morris looked unconvinced until Mayor Simmons stepped forward. As one of the most respected men in New Hope and owner of the largest ranch, his word carried weight. I lost 12 head of cattle to these thieves, Captain, he said gravely. And I'm telling you, these Comanche saved not just our property today, but our lives. My wife and children would be dead if not for their courage. The captain's certainty wavered visibly. He looked from the townspeople to the Comanche warriors, clearly struggling to reconcile this reality with his preconceptions. Sarah moved forward, standing tall beside Tall Buffalo. Captain Morris, today has shown what's possible when we look beyond our fears and prejudices. White Eagle's band has honored the peace treaty. Isn't it time the U.S. Army did the same? A long, tense silence followed. Finally, Captain Morris removed his hat, a gesture of respect that surprised everyone present. It seems I've been misinformed, he admitted reluctantly. Sheriff, I'll need statements from the prisoners. And, he added, turning to Tall Buffalo, I would speak with your chief. White Eagle will return when he knows it is safe, Tall Buffalo replied. Perhaps in a few days we can arrange a council. Captain Morris nodded stiffly. Very well. As the soldiers dispersed to help with the cleanup, Sarah turned to Tall Buffalo, her eyes bright with exhausted triumph. We did it. For today, he cautioned. The path to true peace remains long. But it's a beginning, she insisted. Because of you. Because of what you and your warriors did. People here will tell a different story about the Comanche. Dr. Thompson approached, placing a hand on Tall Buffalo's shoulder. You'll always have friends in New Hope now. Both you and your people. In the days that followed, an unprecedented council was held in the neutral ground between New Hope and the Comanche village. White Eagle and Captain Morris signed a new agreement, one that acknowledged the Comanche band's innocence and established clearer boundaries and protections. For Tall Buffalo, the experience had transformed his understanding of possibility. As he prepared to return to his people after the council, he sought out Sarah one last time. My chief has asked me to serve as liaison between our peoples, he told her. I will visit New Hope regularly to trade and maintain our new understanding. Sarah smiled, the western sun highlighting the features that reflected her mixed heritage. A bridge between worlds, just as she herself had become. Then this isn't goodbye. No, he agreed, a rare smile softening his stern features. It is a beginning.